It's President's Week in the British Columbia Football Conference. Up next is Rob Lervold, President of the West-Shore Rebels. Rob, thanks for doing this.
You bet. Good afternoon, Blake.
So you're wearing the Rebels colors.
I do.
Let's see if anybody else has got the smart enough to do that for the video. I don't know.
Well, we're representing here, so.
So we're at the BCFC annual general meeting while we're having this conversation. So Rob, let's just talk about Rob Lervold. How long you've been involved with the Rebels, that sort of thing.
Well, I have, as a president, this will be my third season, but obviously I played for the team way back in the late 80s, so I've been around about 30 plus years, but actually in this capacity for this will be my third season coming up.
So going back as a player 30 odd years ago, you know a lot about junior football. Before you got back involved with the Rebels, were you paying much attention to the football team? Were you attending a lot of games, or had you lost contact?
Yeah, they moved out to the West-Shore from the city of Victoria a few years back, so I went to quite a few of the games out in the community because I live out that way. So, but I've always followed the team and always checked to see the status, where they're at, and how they're progressing. So yeah, I've kept in touch pretty much over the years.
One of the reasons I ask you that, and it was an interesting thing, and apologies, refresh my memory, the president before you?
Doug Kobayashi.
Doug Kobayashi. Yeah. I'd mentioned this to him at the 2016 national championship that the Rebels hosted and came this close to knocking off the Hilltops.
I know, I was there.
Sorry, don't mean to remind you. The next day, I met Doug for coffee, and I saw somebody walk in with a Hilltops hat, and I assumed they were a fan visiting from Saskatoon, and they were actually a resident of Langford that had been in Langford for 20 odd years and had never been to a football game. And they said, yeah, we know about the Rebels, just don't ever go. And they said, now we're coming. This was great football. Yeah. And I had this conversation with Doug, and he said, yeah, that's the battle you have in Victoria, where it's a soccer community and football's there, but it's maybe not as top of mind as soccer and rugby is. Is that something your board, is that something you guys talk about and how to raise that profile?
Yeah, I think the move out to the West-Shore for us has really elevated our profile in the community. So in the community, in the Western communities, getting out of Victoria, out of maybe a bit of that wash where there's a lot of things going on the West-Shore, there's a couple other teams out our way, but we're the only team that's actually based in the West-Shore in Langford. So I mean, we're pretty lucky that we've got the great community support we do in Langford. We've got a facility that's, I think, second to none in the province. I don't know if you've been paying attention this off-season, but a major stadium expansion going on in Langford at West Hill Stadium where we play. So the capacity of the stadium is going to be doubled this year. New facilities, new parks in the area. So, I mean, it's... part of the struggle for sure is getting your profile in your community raised up, and that's really what our focus has been the last couple of years, is really try to raise that profile. I think in terms of, moving out to the West-Shore and getting alumni involved, people that have been involved in the football community, that's certainly the big challenge, right, is keeping those people involved. So that's another, focus that we're really trying to work with minor football, people that played when they were younger, and get them involved again. Our coaching staff this off-season's done a great job of getting involved in the high school programs, the community programs, and they're doing camps and clinics and all those kind of things. So I think in the long run, that's how you've got to build it, is right down to the grassroots and get those kids involved and get the parents of those kids involved. Because a lot of kids that are playing community football now, their parents played, right? So, it's oftentimes it's a family thing. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what we're trying to do, trying to raise the profile and really, get it to grow out in our area. And in our area, in the West-Shore, in Langford, it's one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. So, really being involved with the youth, the young families, is really what we're trying to accomplish.
It's funny you talk about connecting with the high school and the community football in Langford. You don't have a lot of football, and that's another things that we struggle with a little bit in British Columbia, with I think 48 high schools in a populated province. You don't have a lot of football. high school wise, but you got some good high school football there.
Yeah.
I asked Cable Atwell, the president of the Raiders, the same question. What's the key to maybe, other than, you maybe touched on some of it in terms of camps and things, but so many kids right away want to go U Sport, when really junior football is a better option for them because they're not actually a university student at that moment. When you've got a high profile, successful junior team that plays in pretty awesome stadium, what's the key, other than the things we mentioned? I guess maybe I'm putting you in the spot, but what's the key to making sure that those kids have the West Shore Rebels on the radar and they just don't want to go anywhere else because there's no reason to?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I touched on it. What our coach, our head coach, and some of the assistants are doing right now. We've actually made a real strong connection with the Belmont program, which is the high school program that is right next door to our stadium. Their kids are training with our kids right now in the off season. So we're 3 nights a week in the weight room, and we've got the Belmont players and their coaches involved. Our head coach is, on the field with them during the season, helping them out with their strength conditioning and their football. So that's it's crucial because they're in our community and that's our feeder system. I mean, our hope this year is to have 30 to 40 local kids on this football team. And that hasn't happened for many years, but that's because we've been, really pushing that in the community football and with the high school team. So, I think in terms of this year, you're going to see a bigger local flavor on this team than we've had at least as long as I've been involved, but probably a lot further back than that. So that's very exciting for us, is to have those, and like you said, we've got some high school programs in the city of Victoria that are top-notch, and we're seeing this year more and more of those kids are going to be playing for us, because you're right, it's not the youth sports isn't for everyone right away. Some of these kids are best to spend 2 years developing their strength, their size, their knowledge of the game for a couple of years. We get a lot of those kids back from youth sports after they go play for 2 years. They come back because maybe school wasn't for them or they weren't ready to go to school. So, I mean, it's a little bit of everything, but having that, that connection when the kids are growing up, they're coming out to the games, they're involved with our coaches, they're getting to know them. So when the time comes to make that decision, the first decision they're going to make, well, if I'm going to play junior, it's going to be right here in my backyard. And if I'm going to go to school, maybe I wait 1 or 2 years and I play junior ball first. Or, when school doesn't work out, maybe they're coming back. So it's a little bit of everything. It can't just be one of those. It's got to be everything.
So you talk about players leaving and maybe coming back. I talked a little bit to Ashton McKinnon last year.
Yep.
And he's one of your best commercials for saying...
Yep. And he works just up the road.
Why play anywhere else? This is right here, great facility.
And lots of talent, too. He could have played in a lot of places, right?
Yeah, big kid.
But that's what we're trying. You've got the worst thing you can have is you see kids from your own community playing somewhere else, right? I mean, so you got to make sure that you're giving them a place to aspire to. And I think being involved in the high school and community groups is huge because they see it as a natural progression, as a place that they can go play, and they're proud to play, right? So.
We talked about the local flavor, but again, because there's not a lot of pure numbers in terms of high school players, you do have to recruit across the country a little bit, and you've been very successful at that the last half a dozen years or so. Big commitment to bring a young man in, find him a place to live, and or system, and with the jobs and typical young kids, they all want to come here and play football. Absolutely. They don't want to work, but they have to work.
Some of them want to work, some of them not so much. You're right.
I've heard a couple stories about billets that you've had over the years, and I think it was Roger Wade that told me the one story. The lady, she's actually got a rebel room or something that they've got paintings. It's real cool.
Yeah, Lisa is one of our great supporters. She's got a house that's within 2 or 3 blocks of the stadium, where we practice, play our games, where we work out. It's all in the same, 3 or 4 block radius, and her house is right there. She's got a basement that she's turned into a Rebels room. It's got a big mural on the wall that all the players that have stayed there have signed. It's a big Rebels logo. There's 4 little dorms, a kitchen and a bathroom down there. It's on the lake. I mean, if I was 20, I'd want to be there. So it's fantastic. I mean, and these programs, as you know, without the support of the community and the people and the sponsors and the businesses and people like that are willing to take, sponsor families that are willing to take players in for the season. I mean, let's face it, they're not doing it to make money. I mean, these kids are eating their $400 worth easy. So, I mean, for her to do that and just be, she's at all the games, she loves the kids, so you can't replace those kind of things. And if you had to fully fund all these kids coming in, you couldn't survive. So places like that are just crucial for the program, and people like her, we just love them. So
I think the average football fan would be shocked at how much work is involved bringing these kids in. Like you said, the budgets to look after them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the biggest budget is what the team president makes, because you're paid very well for doing this.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've doubled my salary this year, hey? Yeah. So I'm going to put in less than I did last year.
So you're going to lose a little less money
in
terms of the volunteer aspect.
Yeah, we're not doing this for the money.
No.
But you know what? I mean, I think, even 30 years ago when I came over here, I mean, Paul Short very well. He's been involved with the league and Victoria football for years. Well, Paul was my coach and my offensive coach when I came over, and he's still involved. And so, when it was a few years ago when they, Rob, would you like to get involved back with the team and do some things? And I just, my first response was, I don't have time for that. But then you start thinking about it, and you think of the great experience that you had, and all the things that it's brought you over the years. And I thought, why wouldn't I, right? Why wouldn't I get back involved? And my wife's involved, and my family helps out, and we've got a lot of friends involved, and a lot of people in the community. So it's actually been very rewarding and a lot of fun, right? I mean, yes, it's a lot of work. Let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot of things that go into it to putting a program together. You have no idea till you get into it, right? And all the different things that are involved. But it's been a lot of fun, and really enjoy working with the kids. We really, part of what we were stressing, and we had a great meeting the other night with the coaching staff, and one of the things we're really stressing is to really give these kids a great experience, and hopefully they leave better than they were when they came, right? So that's kind of our focus. We're lucky to have a whole bunch of coaches on board this year that are all, the same vision, and they really want to help the kids and work with them and make them better people in our communities and better, human beings in the long run. So that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, you hopefully win some games along the way, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
They grow up so much from 18 to 21, 20. They change.
Yeah.
They're kids when they show up. I think somebody has to look at a yearbook photo.
Yeah.
The first year versus the last year, and it looks like somebody's dad the last year or something because they've changed.
Yeah.
2 years ago, when the Rebels hosted the Hilltops, and we talked about what a game that was, and great atmosphere, and fortunately came on the losing end, which is
couple of key plays in that game.
And they've been there so often, right? Nothing phases them.
I know.
Right?
I've got two coaches that are still burning inside about that game. JC, I've talked to JC about it, and Shane. When we were in the Canadian Bowl out in Saskatoon this year, I had a chance to talk to their president about it and a couple of the people out there. They remember the game. In fact, when we walked through their new clubhouse, which is just spectacular, by the way, that game was playing on their big screen. So I stood there and watched a few minutes of it. I was just like, but we were close, and we kind of felt like, they're a great program and a great team, and they've earned everything they've got. But we still feel like that's when we kind of let slip away. We thought we had a chance to win that game, and obviously that's the goal, is to get back there and take another crack at it. So.
It's funny too. The two things I'll never forget about that game, other than what happened on the field, were wanting to rip my heart out, feeling for your head coach JC Boyce in that post-game interview that he was given to Czech.
Yeah.
But he let me sneak into the locker room for his pre-game speech, and that was, if anybody's heard that, it made the hair on your neck stand up. Was awesome. Yeah, and I've heard, and Shane's the same way, and JC, and as you know, we've added Coach Hawking on board this year, and they're all. They're all real good coaches, and what I've learned through this is the respect they've got around the league and the football community and from players. You see some of the stories and some of the Facebook posts and the messages that the previous players send these guys, and the impact they've had on them.
is it's quite neat to see. So, speeches like that, they hit home for some of these kids. Some of these kids, that's the highest level they're ever going to get in football. That was the pinnacle right there. And they have an impact on these kids for sure.
2019, again back to 2016. No doubt you thought that game was the step to a national championship the next year, and it didn't happen. You got upset by the Raiders, and then last year was such a disappointment for this football team with your expectations. And then this year, again, you look at your coaching staff that you've assembled, some of the recruiting that you've done. Instantly, you're a team to beat again. How important is it and we're talking President's Week this week now, so not so much on field, but off field from a business standpoint going forward? How important is it for the West Shore Rebels to get back in that football game and let their fans see a national championship? Putting winning aside, letting fans see what junior football at its highest level is all about. How important is that to you guys?
Yeah, this is no question. This is a big year for us. We really feel like we've got to put a product on the field that our community can back and be real proud of, right? And I think that's, that last year was a tough year for us. There's no question about it. We feel like we've really added some key pieces and really got the program going where we want it to right now. And from a business perspective, these are tough businesses to generate the cash flow and we got, particularly an island team, we got ferries and buses and lots of other challenges that some of the other teams don't have. So it's crucial for us to have a good season, and but more important than that is to represent the team, the community in a real positive way, because that's what gets the sponsors back on board and gets us the community support and the people in the seats. But to have some success in the playoffs and host a national championship, that would be the pinnacle for sure. That's the goal.
Good luck this year, and thanks for doing this.
Okay.
Rob.
Thanks, Blake.